Okay, this is part 4 of the Aleut lecture, and so the weapon of choice among the Aleut was the atlatl, which was a throwing board that would help propel the lance or spear farther using the flick of the wrist. And whaling was really important. The Aleuts practiced sympathetic magic, which means that once a whale was struck, the person who did the strike would go into a hut and pretend to be sick, hoping to make the whale sick and die, and then after it died, they'd tow it back into shore. Now imagine towing a whale with kayaks. There is some evidence that they used aconite, which was from a plant, as a poison in the dart, but that's kind of debatable. But some people say yes, some people say no. Sea otter hunting was also really important, and what they would do is they would go out kind of in a straight line. If somebody saw a sea otter, they'd raise their paddle, and then the other ones would form a circle around the animal, and then they'd do the strike. Kinship was very complicated, but just understand that polygamy, as we know it, actually means more than one spouse, G-A-M-Y. So polygyny means more than one wife, and polyandry means more than one husband. Now, it would be hard to have more than one wife, but even harder to have more than one husband, because then you'd be sewing all kinds of garments and you'd have to be repairing the kayak. So it'd be hard. Men could take the wife's younger sisters. There was bride service. Sometimes if a man wanted to marry a particular girl in a village, he would go and work for her parents for a while. And matrilineal kinship just means that things are passed through the female line, and mother's brother usually raises the son, not the biological father. So we know that there was warfare. There were feuds. Feuds is fighting between families versus political groups, which is wars. And the object usually in the Aleutians was to loot and take captives. Women, goods, fur, kayaks. Aleut society was highly stratified, so they had chiefs, nobles, commoners, and slaves. And what we think was going on is, if mummification was a way of preserving the spirit of the person, dismemberment of enemies was thought to stop the spirit from coming back. So they did dismember their enemies. And here's a picture of an Aleut baby that was found in one of the caves. And again, you'll read about the Aleutian mummies and you'll watch the movie if you so choose. But a majority of them were found on Cagamil Island, in the islands of the Four Mountains region. Other medical practices, they practiced acupuncture. There's evidence of trepanation, which means performing surgery on the skull, and bloodletting. So again, very, very into human anatomy and doing medical procedures. Aleut religion, we don't know much about it, but there was a belief in the spirit world, and amulets were used. The part of a dead body of a mummy was very, very powerful for whale hunting. And sometimes a garment worn by a menstruating woman might be a very powerful item. So they did have all kinds of items used as good luck charms. They had many place names, which makes sense because they did need to know their environment. And again, they had a lot of words for human anatomy. They had no words for to suffer or to forgive, which is really interesting. And then a lot of interesting personal names like Old Duck Stomach or Shooter of Birds, that type of thing. And that's it for this section. Oh, last but not least, they did have burdash. And what that means is those were boys raised as girls. We don't know a lot about them, but there were excerpts written by some of the Russians about them. They're very common in Native American societies, and they were also on Kodiak Island, so kind of transvestite type of individuals or people of two spirits.